Hey folks, John Ferguson Smart here. I got an email from a chap the other day explaining how he'd come onto a new team and they were doing BDD and he was having trouble keeping up with the test automation. And so I asked for him to explain or tell me a little bit more about what this process was. And the way he explained it was that the BAs would write the user stories and the acceptance criteria in a gherkin, in a given when-then format, give it to the team. The team would then have to automate everything, all of these given when-then scenarios in the same sprint. And their perception was that that was how you're supposed to do BDD. The problem with that is the scenarios that were coming in, the scenarios that the BAs were writing for these user stories were very hard to automate. And the reason for that is that writing given when-then scenarios in user stories is not the intent of BDD. That's not how you're supposed to do BDD, and it won't work very well as far as automation. It makes automation actually quite hard because unless you're very good at it in a very mature team, those scenarios will not be done in the spirit of collaboration. You won't have worked together to come up with the scenarios, the acceptance criteria, the examples, the rules, and then figured out the best way to automate them. You're given this block of scripts effectively, which are often not very well written, and given the task to automate them. That's really hard. So that is not an optimal way of working. A much more optimal way, a better way, is for the BAs just to write bullet points, simple acceptance criteria, or a story, as in write a little narrative about what a requirement is supposed to do from the user perspective, and then have a conversation about it. And the result of that conversation is a more comprehensive list of rules and examples. So that's where example and feature mapping are very good techniques for that. So you have that conversation, and then you write your given when-then scenarios, or maybe you just do it in straight in JUnit or Jasmine or whatever automation tool you're using. There are plenty of ways of writing descriptive executable specifications. Once you've got that list of examples, you can make that call, depending on how visible it has to be, depending on how public facing it has to be. You can make a call of how you actually go about automating it. But the automation comes after you get together and have that conversation, come up with the examples together, come up with the rules together, come up with get some clarity on what the requirements actually are. Then the second step, the formulate step, is where you actually turn those examples into a given when-then structure, if that's what works best. And that collaboration, that happens before any work starts on the sprint. You don't just get dumped a user story in a sprint with all these given when-then scenarios that you've never seen before. You collaborate together to make those scenarios, to come up with those scenarios before the sprint, and that leads into the sprint. And then when you actually get the work, you know what you've got to do. You've had the conversations about the best strategy, the best way to do the automation. And that will make things a lot easier. So that's basically my answer to that question. How do you make automation better when you're given all these given when-then scenarios? Hope you found that useful, folks. Thanks for listening.